Alrighty. Sorry. Okay, so I think we are ready to go ahead and get started. It's really, really, really nice to have everybody here tonight. It's our last night of Data Science, Miami Data Science Machine Learning Week and AI Week, Meetup Week, and we've had such an amazing 4 days of content and people and different locations that we've been at, and this is a really exciting last night, so thank you so much for joining us, and we have some really great content. First of all, I want to thank our sponsors. It's been amazing that we've been able to do this for free for everybody, so we're really grateful for that. And for those of you who don't really know a lot about Data Science Salon, I wanted to play a video for you guys to kind of give you a sense of who we were before COVID. We've actually doubled in size during COVID, so it's been great for us, but we're just going back to in-person events, and that was really our bread and butter before, and I kind of wanted to show you this so you have an idea of what Data Science Salon is all about. Next slide. So yeah, that's us. We are headquartered here in Miami. We are, if you could go to the next slide, we are brought to you by Formulated By. So we are the company behind the salon, and we actually launched it 5 years ago to really connect the community together. And we started it in Miami, and it's really taken off from here nationally. So we're really, really excited to be back in person. If you could go to the next slide. So if you guys are interested in connecting with data scientists, please talk to us. We're the people to talk to. Thanks again to our sponsors, TigerGraph, ATM, Mays Business School, FIU, and IBM for making this possible. Next slide. Oops. There we go. Thank you. I think it's working. Yeah.
Working backwards.
Yeah, it's working backwards. Yeah, it's working. Hey, that's what happens with your life. Things can go a little wrong. That's okay. And thank you so much to our community partners. I think a lot of you guys know these logos, and we're really grateful. And today we're really grateful to 4Geeks Academy for hosting us here. And it's a lovely space. Thank you so much. We are always looking for speakers. We're hosting, as I mentioned, sometimes 5 to 10 different events per week, so please apply. And we are really excited about our content platform. You can access all of our content from there and watch it on your own time. We have about, I think, almost 500 pieces of content now over the years that we've gathered in there. And we are really, really excited about our next hybrid event that we're planning, February 16th. We already got a beautiful place in the Miami Design District, so we're going to be actually giving away 10 tickets to folks that actually came and joined us in person this week. So please look for an email from us because you're going to be automatically entered to get those tickets. And last thing that I wanted to mention is we are the most diverse data science community in the world, and one of our initiatives that is really dear to all of our hearts is elevating women in data and really changing the way that the landscape is for women in the space. So that's really one of the initiatives that we're really pushing forward. So if you have female colleagues that you'd like to elevate, please let us know. Please let them know about this program and have them enter and contact us to get involved. And we also have a Slack channel, so if you guys want to join, you can actually scan this QR code right now, and it will give you a link to join, so I'll give you a second to do that. And we have, I think, 2,500 members or so in there, but they're all over the United States and Canada, and you can actually stay in touch with everybody after the event is over. And we'll share with you guys an email as well, if you don't have to scan it. I'll give you another second. And another thing is we actually run 3 meetups here in Miami. So, and our main meetup is this one. So if you want to join that one, you can scan that code. And that is our largest meetup here. I think we have over 1,000 members in there. And that is our main DSS Miami meetup that we've had for a really long time. We also have the Miami R user group and the Hadoop user group that we run here too. If you guys want to speak at any of those or get involved with any of that, please let us know. And without further ado, I'm going to give it to Marcelo. And thanks again so much for hosting us, and enjoy your evening, guys.
So welcome to For Geeks. It's a pleasure to host you all. I appreciate it. You know that this afternoon I was talking to Anna, and she was like, "Do you want to say something about For Geeks?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't have anything in particular to say." And I was watching you, and then I had like a 30-minute pitch come into my mind, and I don't want to make it longer. I just want to say a couple of things. First, why are we related to this week? Actually, it's because we have launched a new AI and machine learning program, the first one in the city, the first one in the state, and actually probably one of the few in the world. It's a part-time machine learning and AI program that you can all apply. And the reason why we are talking so much about it is because we have an open scholarship that you can all participate if you want, of course. So each one of you can apply, and we're choosing 3 people that are getting $6,500 discount out of the tuition. So it's a really huge opportunity. We're making this for this week, for Anna, but also for the community. I was listening about how Data Science Salon was before COVID, and that made me think how was 4 Geeks before COVID. And I remember that a few months, actually 2 months before COVID, we rented this place. So we have been here for 3 months, actually in person. And we were, I remember that we had this banner there with 500 students and 4 locations. We have grown like 2 or 3 times. Because actually COVID accelerated things for education, at least, for coding, for tech education. Of course, plenty of people are having a hard time. Everybody's having a hard time. But in terms of learning to code and being part of the technology world, and how Miami has become a tech ecosystem for the U.S. and for the world, actually, it's really nice to be part of this ecosystem right now, and to be part of the next wave that we're all together building here, man. So if you want to enroll, you can apply, you can send an email. I'm going back again to the scholarship. So if you want to get or be part of that scholarship, you can send an email to info@4geeksacademy.com, info@4geeksacademy.com, and say, hey, I'm Raul, I'm from whatever, and I don't know, I'm really interested in learning or becoming an AI engineer, so we can consider that as part of the options, of course. Yeah, well, that's just information about 4 Geeks. We have been named as one of the top 30 schools in the world, and there's plenty of things that I can say and that you can ask us. I don't want to get annoying about it, but I want to say thanks again, well, to those who are here tonight, but also to those who are streaming tonight. We have probably 200 people more watching the event. So I want to give it to you back and move forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great. Thank you. And thanks again for hosting us. And without further ado, I'm going to be introducing Carlos Ariza. He's the head of data science at Creative Arts Agency. And I just had a really good conversation with him this afternoon. We had a live stream on LinkedIn, and now he's going to go deeper into this talk that you guys saw, because I know that people actually saw another stream. So yeah, here you go, Carlos. I will stand right here.
All right. Well, great to be here. Thanks for having me, and thank you, Anna, for leadership, and thank you for Geeks and hosting us. It's been great to be involved with the Data Science Salon community for 2 years in multiple ways. So really like you guys. Anyway, so I work for Creative Artists Agency. I'm not sure all of you know about the agency. We've been around, it's about 40 plus years old, and we represent clients in movies, TV, sports, music, books, really, you name it in entertainment. We have foot in that business. So what I wanted to talk about today was a little bit about how we created a data program within CAA and show some examples. Basically, the landscape of entertainment has changed a lot in the last few years. Right? So if you think about the way the world used to be, the analog world, people cared about Nielsen ratings on TV and they cared about box office. And what we're seeing now is completely different, right? Because what we're seeing is streaming becoming much, much bigger. You see, for example, Netflix investing. Netflix is now the biggest buyer of content on TV and movies in the world. Disney Plus exploding in popularity, Spotify, of course, growing. But the other thing that's happening too is that the value of content, how content is valued, is also changing a lot. So you get value from franchises, you get value from intellectual property that goes into books and comic books and music and video games and so forth. So be able to make sure the creators get paid for the creativity and the artistry that they bring in. That's basically our job as an agency. The last thing, and this is something that I'm going to mention multiple times, there's a lot of opacity is the word. Like, it's not very visible how well things are doing online. So you would think that in a digital world it'll be easier to measure, but in some ways it's actually harder because it all happens within walled gardens. It happens, so Netflix knows down to the second everything that you watch, but they don't tell anybody. So our job on the other side of the table is to figure out, well, how much do people watch this? Do people like it? Who are these people that like it, and so forth? That's kind of setting the stage as to why our group was created. What we did 4 years ago when I joined is we followed the template. So if you're familiar with Tom Davenport, he published a book called Competing in Analytics at Work. He's done all sorts of research. And he established what's called a Delta model. And so we followed that, and it was kind of rewarding last year to get interviewed by Tom Davenport. So he talked to our group, and he kind of validated that our approach was kind of following his guidance and his ideas and so forth. So what we're seeing is really a move from where we were originally. We're kind of in the localized analytics world, where there were pockets of excellence and little groups that were completely disconnected. Now we're a centralized, unified team. We have a data warehouse, we have machine learning and AI implementation. And really, the vision is when you become an analytical competitor, is that you don't make decisions without data in the room. So one of the sayings that we have in the company is data in the room. Just like you say, it's everybody that needs to be in the room. Well, data is also like virtually another person that needs to be in the room when big decisions are being made, client is being signed, or whenever we are, making major investments. So the way we're organized, this is pretty standard, but like I said, we try to follow kind of the pure model. We have a data science group, which is concentrated on algorithms, data quality, forecasting, predictive modeling. We have a data analytics group that concentrates on BI applications, dashboards, data models. Our data insights team, they're basically internal consultants, so they use the tools that we build and they work directly with agents. So sometimes a lot of their output may be in PowerPoint or emails or presentations, but a lot of it is fed from the modeling that we do. And then we have a data engineering team that supports all the pipelines, databases, data warehousing, data ingestion, APIs, and so forth. So it's really a full service data team in that sense. So we're trying to cover all the functions, and it's centralized. So what's been happening is that those little pockets of analytics have either joined us, or it's kind of like a board, I guess, like assimilate and become part of our group. Or it becomes much harder to do your job because we control a lot of the new data sources that they would be using for their work. So one of the things that we built internally is what we call CA Intel. And Intel, we started about 3 years ago, version 1. And what you're seeing here is a current implementation, well, about 2 months old, so we keep constantly improving it. But it's basically the BI phase of the work that we're doing. So the first version of Intel we built was around social reach and basically understanding online popularity of artists. And this is important because a lot of our clients, for example, Reese Witherspoon, which we'll follow through these examples, she is in many different businesses. So of course she's a famous actress, but she's also into books, she's also into makeup and other investments, right? So the ability to know what things resonate with her audience and where she's popular online allows her to negotiate better deals for advertising. So we start with social, and that became very successful. It's kind of the flywheel, so to speak. So we needed to quick hit that everyone in the agency would use. So our sports agents use this with a basketball players negotiating a shoe deal. They will need to know, well, where are the fans and what brands do those fans like and so forth. The next stage Intel was our digital demand for video and TV and movies and so forth. And we built the whole interface and we collect and unify, at this point, more than 12 sources to create this platform. So it allows the agents to know how popular content is across different platforms and globally as well. We collect data from different countries, different streaming platforms, and then we blend it with different sources as well. One thing, as you can imagine, Netflix, I'll talk a little bit more on Netflix because, like I said in the beginning, they're the biggest buyer, so we think a lot about them. And in some ways, it's a little bit like cooperation and competition at the same time. There are buyers, but we also want to be good partners to them, right? So we need to understand their business. Part of understanding their business is understanding what's popular. So if, assuming most of you have Netflix, they have a top 10 ranking, right? Every day it updates. So one of the things that we've done is that we have started collecting this data and trying to turn it into a popularity metric of sorts. So you can actually track over time how long a particular show has been in the top 10, but also by genre or by country, and then you can use this to compare and say, well, season 1 of this show did really well. So the creator of the show, who's our client, should get paid more in the next season. So it becomes a tool for helping our clients get more value. So it seems very rudimentary, right? It's just top 10, but if you find a way to use it, especially with the lack of data there is for Netflix, it becomes a useful tool. But so far, everything that I show you is just descriptive, right? So looking back, historical, just kind of nice dashboard on top, which makes it easy for analysts to use. We do things like Company 360, so you get like a unified view of a studio, for example, in this case Marvel. And this is more on the motion picture side, so you can see how big their box office is, historically, worldwide, $35 billion business, if you add up all the movies they made. And really, when they release titles, what are the awards that they won and all that. These are very important metrics when you're trying to convince an actor to take the lead. So if for the new Marvel movie that's coming out, an actor may be reluctant to say, well, it's super bad for my career. So these kinds of tools. And Marvel is kind of an easy example. I think there are studios that are less obvious or not as well known. So having this information may help you decide, wow, I really want to work with this studio. This is an example of our music side of the world. So we do, on the music side, a lot of music touring. So our agents book tours for clients. And in this example, what we're doing is looking at recency. When was the last time that a concert happened, let's say around Atlanta, and the dots that are green, for example, are more than 12 months ago. So those are all potential cities where it would be good to a tour. So having this ability, especially now after COVID, we're trying to figure out where should we tour. Some venues that existed 2 years ago don't exist anymore, or they make a change, or there are limits to capacity. So having the ability to interact with data becomes very, very useful. So now let's talk a little bit about the machine learning side of things, right? So still pretty faces and pretty pictures of clients, but behind this, there's actually a similarity model that's based on the catalog of work that each of them have done. So for example, if we look at Reese Witherspoon, the person that has the closest audience to them is actually Justin Timberlake, which seems like a weird thing, right? They don't look alike, but in terms of their followers online and what those people like, and what are the pages and the preferences and the brands that they follow, there's actually a lot of overlap. And this is very helpful because if you're trying to do, let's say, a marketing campaign, and Reese Witherspoon is not available or not interested, you can easily find someone that would be like a doppelganger audience, right? So who would bring me as an advertiser the same audience from the agency? So that's kind of a very popular feature of our platform. It's the audience indirect. So again, this is based on online social media audiences, because a lot of the marketing is digital now. So we're talking about Instagram campaigns, we're talking about YouTube and so forth. When you go back to the TV and movie world, then you're looking more at similarity based on their catalog of work. So if there's a new sci-fi movie that's being produced, what would be people that would be a good fit for that cast? So you want to look at people that have worked in sci-fi movies before, and you can actually choose, well, who should play next to Reese Witherspoon on this project. So you can actually see that Paul Rudd has a distance, in this case 34.7, So there's a particular metric of distance between both their careers. So you can sort it and then filter and say, well, what are the traits that cause this distance? So for example, they both work in movies that are Valentine's Day themed, and date night movies, and movies based on a book, and movies, romantic comedies, and so forth. So having all this information structured in a way that's easy to fit to them all, I think allows us to do this kind of similarity. And it could be also similarity from the artist to the project, right? So you can say, is this person a good fit for a particular new project, and is it too different from their career? Yeah. Extraction? Yeah.
Like some people rated it poorly, or like, oh, it was
Oh, it did really well.
I liked it.
Yeah.
But some people were like, oh, this was like out of his like genre or something. I was reading some reviews. So do you also factor in ratings when you're deciding, okay, so this person was in this subgenre of film, that they do well in it, like, but not being the background.
Right, exactly. So yeah, you have to factor it in. Sometimes it's harder to know at the individual actor level. We have certain vendors that collect the data, and they're actually people vote on their app and they collect the data to say who do you like the most on this particular episode, this particular show. So having that is helpful directionally, but it's not perfect. And sometimes celebrity actors in particular, they want to do something that's outside their comfort zone or what they've done before because they don't want to be pigeonholed. So you got to be careful that these kinds of tools don't pigeonhole them. And that's one thing that I will emphasize later, but what we're doing here is not replacing the agent. We call it augmented intuition. So it's AI is not artificial intelligence, but it's augmented intuition. It's kind of the joke internally because you don't want the agents to feel that the machine's doing the job for them. It's a tool, and they use it when it's helpful to their clients, and then they'll ignore it. They'll rely on their own intuition. So, but it allows them to think of things that they wouldn't have thought before. So we go back to the example here. Maybe they would have never pulled Reese Witherspoon with Paul Giamatti, but it turns out Paul Giamatti did a movie a while back called Sideways. That was kind of a weird movie, but also there's some romantic elements in it. So there's some overlap there. So we have to investigate more why Paul Giamatti is number 4 on this list, but maybe they could do like an interesting romantic comment between two of them, right? So seeing that on the screen allows people to have conversations and ideas and so forth. But it is a conversation starter, not a decision-making machine. One thing that happened, obviously, was the pandemic. And early on, this happened around April, May of last year. We had a lot of questions about our music business, which of course shut down in March of last year. And there was a lot of uncertainty at the time about the vaccine rollout and whether people would take it or not and so forth. So we, one of the things that we did, we built a simulation model calibrated to the best knowledge we had at the time of the pandemic trends and all that, and to try to understand what would happen to our business depending on when people would go back to concerts, right? So we created this metric called perceived safety, and we simulated it over time. It had to do with things like the case levels in certain countries. It had to do with deaths and how long it would take for people to be vaccinated and so forth. And we were able to build multiple scenarios. So in this case, I'm showing you two scenarios. One where the vaccine came out kind of where it did in early January, and one in which the vaccine would have come out a year later, which again, we're very lucky to have the vaccine now, but it was not it wasn't clear in 2020 that was going to happen. So this allowed our financial team to develop alternative budgets and scenarios, and they continue to use this tool, with the Delta variant, with all the variants that we have. We maintain it for them, and they're actually able to have conversations with their board of directors of what can happen for music business and so forth. Another one that's kind of keeping us busy these days is pivoting from popularity to valuation, right? So how do we know that what we're packaging is correct value? Are we leaving money on these negotiations and all that? So before we had the theater historical box office data, and we could use that very well. But now we can have like a partial truth. We don't have like a full truth on what's going on, right? So we have panels of viewers that fill out surveys either through Nielsen or some other vendors that collect data for us and tell us how many people are watching what. And then we have internet activity, right? So there's piracy, there's social media posts, hashtags, and all that. And those things get used. So for example, if you have seen the Justice League, the Zack Snyder cut, so Zack Snyder's a client, and they needed data to prove that there was popularity or demand for the Zack Snyder cut. So we did a lot of social media analysis to collect all that and measure it. Here's an example from Casa. And it's interesting because as the popularity of it has changed, the key question that comes up is, can you assume that viewership equals revenue? That's a big leap, and it's something that's kind of still a conversation in the industry. It's not clear that just because you watched it, that's the reason why you subscribe to Netflix, right? So part of the challenge in trying to come up with value here, with trying to understand or predict if something's going to be popular on Netflix, is, in my mind, a small data problem, because we only have about 3,000 data points in terms of shows and movies that are on Netflix. So we don't have billions of images the way Google would or Facebook or something like that. And when you have models that are smaller in terms of data availability for training, you need to work a lot harder in the feature engineering, right? Thankfully, we have access to all the other data sources that I showed you, and those can be inputs to the data model. So we started with around 2,000 features, and we've been kind of shrinking that and processing it and all that. And then we're using multiple approaches, right? So we have competing models. Some are deep learning models, some are machine learning traditional models. And then we have things like Oregon regression. So all these are more or less in competition with each other, and we track performance of the models. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there like a statistical basis for overnight virality or whatever that, like the people who sort of become famous overnight? And is there any way of like quantifying like staying power of
for a specific client, you mean?
or like client scouting? That makes any sense. It's like videos that out of nowhere just become very, very popular, and and then.
Oh, you're talking about like what's happening on TikTok and stuff like that? Yeah,
But
we've
like,
been looking.
I'm thinking like maybe in a movie. Shawn Mendes,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
like he puts a video of him singing on Vine, I think it was.
yeah, and it goes viral and it goes
Yeah.
away. So depending on what, one of the things I wanted to say here is that you get that very specific pattern on TV shows on Netflix. It has this kind of heartbeat type of. So every time an episode drops, you get a heartbeat. You can actually see how long the tail is and track it and actually try to use it to predict. So we've done some work on clustering analysis where we cluster the shape. If you're interested, it's called dynamic time warping. It's a really interesting thing on Google. They developed where it's basically a form of time series analysis where the shape of the time series can be clustered. So then you know that then we have like 8 different clusters and each one of them tells you a story. It's maybe like reality TV shows behave a certain way that's different from movies or behave different. So that's a good question because yeah, the shape of the virality actually matters for the staying power and for the value of that content.
Another quick question, I'm just curious about this. With like movie and TV show content now, there's like so many different modalities, right? Between like okay, over the air versus cable versus satellite versus internet streaming, and then is it airing live? Is the movie airing live versus is it on demand?
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you noticed any significance to that in predicting how truly successful something is?
It's a big question right now. One of the things that you see, for example, with piracy data, and people using BitTorrent or other pirate sources, is that if the movie opens, whenever the movie is available on streaming, then it explodes on the piracy websites because it's available digitally in high quality. But if the movie is only in theaters, then it takes much longer for piracy to happen.
Right.
So that allows the studio to collect more money in the box office before it gets pirated. So you definitely see that, and that's a big conversation happening in the industry right now. Should we have movies come out at the same time in streaming box office? I think the pandemic created this situation, but it's hard to say whether that's sustainable longer term or not because it's eating into the revenue for the studios. So, thanks for that question. So what I was saying before is that we're using multiple modeling approaches to make sure this find the right model. So we're very we're trying to use experimentation and then really treat it as an experiment. So one of the things that we use, a lot of the stuff that we build on Databricks. They are one of the implementations they have is Mlflow, which is a great platform for experimentation. So you're actually able to compare metrics across different modeling approaches, and you're actually able to say, okay, this model is behaving better, and then catch things like model drift, where you start seeing a model maybe not performing as well as it used to, once you start using it for real, in real life applications. So we're huge fans of these kinds of approaches because otherwise it's hard to keep a model overrun. So the other thing that we do a lot of probabilistic analysis, right? So some of the outputs from the model we're actually validating against real data. So in this case, the model outputs is not just one number, but it's actually a whole probability distribution of how this particular show will perform. And then we compare against actuals. So and if you divide the demand into these 6 different buckets, this is a bucket 2 type of show, and it has this shape. But if it was a number 5 type of show, it would have a higher probability on bucket number 5. So having the ability to look at things probabilistically then allows us to do things like what's the expected value, what's the range. So really it's much better than just providing a point estimate, right? So we hate, especially for these kinds of applications, we hate to give a point estimate because then they'll say, well, you got it wrong. And it's like, we know it's wrong, it's just how far off are you? And is it useful, right? So I mean, the whole saying of all models are wrong and some are useful definitely applies here. And then explainability. So if you're familiar with this world, you've heard of SHAP values, and they're super helpful whenever you have a model to avoid the black box syndrome, right? When things may feel like you don't know what drove a particular result and all that. So we definitely use these kinds of approaches to find out what is the biggest driver. In this particular model, being a Netflix original is very important. It drives a lot of performance because they promote their own content and they make sure that that's what people watch the most. Of course, I had to hide some of the factors, but again, there's a long list of features here that drive our model, and it's changing over time. It varies by country, it varies even by time period. So very, very useful to know what the drivers are. And you have to use these approaches because it's not like with the old-fashioned regression, linear regression models, so you can look at the p-values, right? And that's not really a thing you can do machine learning model anymore. So some lessons from this work. First, no shortcuts. We spend a lot of time on quality. And the old saying of data science is 90% data cleaning is 100% true. So if you don't like data cleaning, you may not want to work in this field. We use agile software development principles. So we use sprints, we use Kanban boards, it works. We do a lot of beta testing with the business. So if it's not useful to the agents, we stop working on it. And we have stopped multiple projects because they're not really generating value for the agents. So we try not to build things that can't be used to make money. Again, what I was saying before about AI augmented inclusion instead of AI as a replacement to the agents, right? So it's kind of important to think about it as a tool and not a decision maker. And then we started being as a secret weapon for the agency, kind of a small group of skunkworks, and now we're trying to become more of a well-known strategic weapon for the agency so that it becomes competitive advantage over time. Some of the key questions we're working on right now, as you saw, we're trying to figure out the value of our clients' work. How much, if you put someone on a particular show, did that show make more money because our client was in it, and therefore can our client be compensated for it? But in a multi-platform environment, when content may go in theater, broadcast, cable, streaming, and so forth. And then how are people paid? Should they evolve to match how people consume content right now? And again, like I said before, auditable analytics is really the future. You need to be able to put how you get to a number. I think having black box models, even if they perform very well, I'd rather have a model that performs worse, but is explainable. And we deal with that. Some of the feature engineering that we've done, we could have done things like dimensionality reduction and other things, and we're trying not to do that because then it causes problems with explainability. Okay, back.
A lot of what you do with the sort of request past data, how do you deal with discovering new stars that don't have a lot of data on them? And, like, Reese Witherspoon, you have a lot of information on how she can interact with the subgenres and all of that, but I don't know, the next star, based on the appearance or, how...
No, it's interesting. There are measures that are fast moving and measures that are slow moving. So for example, IMDb, the website, they have a data source called the star meter, for example. And we've looked at that data kind of analytically, and it moves very, very fast. So whoever is the hottest star this week will be in the top 10 in that star meter, but then they'll disappear. So we keep an eye on that one, and then we see if those people have staying power in other metrics that we track, then we know they're probably good candidates for pursuit. So we look at things, what you would look at everywhere else, right? Google Trends, or you have online social media mentions, and then get a picture of, is this person's career going exponential or is it stagnating? Sometimes it's good that it's stagnating if they're somebody else's clients, because they may be interested in changing agencies. So it becomes pursuit that way as well. So, yeah, go ahead.
For the black box models, have you used the shop values to determine what is a good model? Like you're not, it's a very accurate model, but the shop values point to features that you as a human is like, this is unreasonable. Why would you choose, this crazy feature?
It's great for data errors. So we found a lot of data errors doing that. So you have a model that's performing really well, and then you realize that you made a mistake when you're, for example, doing the data split between training and test, or you realize that you overcounted something. So it's helpful in those kinds of environments to use the shop value. So you have your regular loss metrics, ME, MSE, whatever you use to measure the quality of the performance of the model, but then now it helps you understand why. And then directionally also as well, like at the individual record level, if the model is predicting that this show is going to do well, and data doesn't perform well, there may be a problem. We may be missing data about the cast. So we've done a lot of refinements and iterations, not looking at the global loss metric, but looking at the SHAP values, because then it tells us, okay, this is not reasonable. So I think especially with small data problems like this, sometimes the data is just biased for other reasons. So you have to use common sense, and it's in some ways a little bit more subjective. And but that's how you get to better models in the end. I think if you're completely frequentist would be the term that if you want to go back to the old statistics debate between Bayesian and frequentist. But if you want to be completely data driven, it's very hard when you only have 3,000 shows and movies. Because there's just not enough data to make conclusions about does this feature matter. You may have only 4 movies that light up that feature. So. Yeah.
I have a question on the impact of COVID-19. So many models had to be recalibrated. I'm wondering if for Netflix, for example, it was a spike, I'm assuming, of the watching behavior. If you guys had to recalibrate all your models.
So that's an interesting question. I think at the global, if I worked for Netflix, I would say yes, 100%, because more subscribers, more viewership demand. What we saw is the kinds of content that got consumed changed a little bit. But we're kind of modeling the individual show level. So in terms of share of views, even though the platform got a little bigger, the things that became more popular, that moved more slowly. I think there was a lot more reality. Of course, you remember Tiger King, and it came out of. I don't think if pandemic hadn't happened, Tiger King wouldn't be as successful as it was. Right? We're all stuck at home. It's like, okay, we're gonna watch this crazy show. But I think so. It's a bit of an outlier actually when we put it in that predictive model. Like it's a Pocket 4 instead of a Pocket 5 type of show. But there are a lot of things about the show that are still relevant, and if you compare it to other shows on the platform, reality, craziness, drama, murder, they all light up, right? So those are features and things that people like to watch. So it becomes a high bucket type of content. So, but yeah, definitely we saw kind of a before and after. It's a good question.
Yeah, I have an interesting question. When it comes to like either movie content or like actors, I would imagine that for the most part, something or someone is either like consistently good or consistently bad in terms of how people view it. But how do you, like when you're advising your clients, how do you deal with like the bimodal or like polarizing statistics where, I mean, it definitely happens in sports, it probably happens in entertainment as well, where you have very mixed distribution of how people
view
like the love hate.
It's kind of the Gordon Ramsay problem.
Yeah.
Like, people either love him or hate him because
yeah. So when you're seeing that kind of data emerging from all those channels,
yeah.
like
well, but there's an audience. Our job is not to judge the client, right? It's more like how do we, if they're a client of ours, how do we get them a job, right? So the idea is let's find an audience that resonates, and it may be that the Food Network may not be a good fit, but maybe Discovery Channel would be a better fit.
Audience identification.
Yes, and matching the people, the clients, to the audience that responds.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not sure if you measured this with your models, but you guys have like access to quantify the conversion rate from the product placement on Netflix when they put it on their shows and on their movies. Do you have visibility to that?
No, really, no. I mean, not directly, because that would be Netflix platform, yeah. But I wish we would. We call Netflix a black hole because they don't really share any information, right? So it's very hard to measure what they do. It's like an information void. But anyway, I think I'm out of time, right?
All right, for everyone at home, we have to change the microphone battery super quick, and we're gonna move these chairs. So we'll be back in just a second. And of course, y'all can ask him as many questions as you want.
Oh, okay. Nice to meet you, Laura. Are they gonna be
Alright, for everyone at home, you're back. Alright, now we're back. Alright, so our next speaker is of course Orestes. He's joining us here for Viacom. He's going to have a really great presentation and a really cool demo. All good? Alright, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Hi everyone. My name is Orestes. I'm with Viacom, and today I'm going to talk about how we can extract and visualize customer feedback data. Particularly, I'm going to talk about how we can do text analytics and how we can use NLP libraries to do that. And at the end, I'm going to do a quick demo of data visualization just to see how we can put it all together. Right, so customer feedback, right? So that's essential for every business, so you can understand what your customers' struggles and what they love about your product or service. And of course, we have a huge variety of data sources, anywhere from research and studies to surveys to ratings, reviews, social media, and that data can be either numeric or text, right? So for numeric, for example, we have surveys, right? It can be anything from, hey, rate us, from 0 to 10, or and then text can be even numeric can be anything from I strongly either agree, disagree, I strongly agree, and so on, right? And we can use typical data analysis to summarize all that information. But then when we get to actual text, raw text from feedback from research studies or things from reviews, for example, on Amazon or whatever it is, and social media chatter, that's where we have text data, and that's where text analytics comes in. All right, so what is text analytics? It involves basically the processing of large amounts of text, right? So you can understand what are people talking about, and it's used across many different domains, including product management services, competitive analysis, and so many others. And I'm going to talk about two key methods. One, sentiment analysis, and two, context analysis. All right, so for sentiment analysis, so it's actually a subfield of NLP, or natural language processing. The objective is to measure the attitudes and emotions of what people are saying. And we can use NLP libraries like Bayer Sentiment. That's the one actually I'm going to show. And I like Bayer because it works across different languages, and it's automatic, or you don't have to specify. You can specify, but I usually text different languages. And then context analysis is also a subfield of NLP that tries to identify and extract key phrases or keywords from your text. And allows us to, I actually like it because you can move away from just single keyword detection, which leads you to word clouds, which can be very generic and it doesn't give you enough context, right? So here, actually, you specify the length of phrases that you want to extract. And for this case, I'm going to show you Rake, NLTK. That's one of the NLP libraries to do context analysis. And keep in mind that there are different, even though I'm going to show you two, there are different libraries that does similar things. So for example, Rake It works pretty well across different domains, but I believe there's one specific for healthcare. For example, healthcare customer feedback. I believe it's John Snow Labs that has one, or Spark, I think, also has one. And then for sentiment analysis, there are different ones. Vader was built specifically for social media, but it works well across other domains as well. And if you have a very specific domain or industry, you may want to research specific libraries for that. But in general, they work very similarly. All right, so let me show you a couple of very simple Python code examples. And for this, our case study is going to be Amazon Kindle reviews from, I think it's from between February and April 2019. It's a public data set. It's available through data.world. All right, so I won't go through all the detail, but again, it's just very simple. At the top, you just import your basic libraries, right? So pandas, numpy, Vader sentiment. I import break and LTK as well. I import my data set, which is kindlefire.csv, and then I just initiate the object and the function there to do the sentiment analysis. And the first output you're gonna get is this line right here in the middle, which has like a negative score, neutral score, positive score, and the compound score. And I'm gonna talk about the scores in just a bit. And then at the end, I just do some custom code, very simple, just to get those scores, because this is for the whole data set, right? But we're gonna do that for every single line of feedback that we have in the data set. And at the end, I just add that to my data frame. So these scores are what are called polarity scores in the Vader sentiment documentation. So about the scores, so the compound is the one that you're gonna go to, right? It goes from -1 to 1. Of course, the negative means negative sentiment. Positive, the highest positive sentiment you can get is 1. And these are the thresholds that you typically use. So positive is going to be anything more than 0.05. Neutral is going to be in the middle between -0.05 and 0.05. And then negative, anything below 0.05. So it's kind of like, it's a very tight threshold, right? It's not like -0.1 or 0.2 to +0.2. All right, so yeah, so the compound is the main one. And then you can also use the positive, neutral, and negative scores. Those are scores basically it reflects kind of the ratios for the proportions of each of those things in the text, right? So it's going to identify how much positivity is there, how much neutrality, how much negativity is there. So I'm going to read this for you guys because it's kind of small. So let's take the first one, for example, right? The review says, I bought one last year from one cousin and had to continue for another this year. Great buy, in my opinion, right? So the compound is 0.62, and you have kind of a breakdown of the polarity as well. There's 0 negativity, there's somewhat some neutrality, and then positivity, of course. And then in contrast, let's see, yeah, let's get the last one. It says, tablet had trouble from the beginning. It kept restarting and rebooting. I had to return it. Right? So that's a -0.4 compound score. So of course, that's kind of a negative. All right, so let's move on to context analysis. Again, very simple. I just instantiate the object for rake. And the cool thing is that you can specify what you want to extract, right? So you can specify the minimum length or the minimum number of the minimum length of the phrase or the number of words that you want to extract and the maximum, right? So right here I do specify a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 4. That means that I'm not going to be extracting single keywords. I'm going to be extracting at least a phrase of 2 words and a maximum of 4 words. And actually in the demo I do a comparison of what between 2 and 4 looks like, and between 3 and 4 looks like, just so you can see how you can play with it. So yeah, just another function to do that across every single row. Just custom code to my data frame. And this is what the output looks like, right? So let's get the same, maybe the second one. It says, I will try for the 3rd time with my new Amazon Fire. It seems to have nice upgrades, right? And again, like the array keywords that were extracted, extracted was a new Amazon Fire, nice upgrades at the third time. And then, for example, if we get the one before the last, it says meh, it works. I find it difficult to navigate. I also have an iPad mini. This seems to be less intuitive than the iPad. And then the keywords for that are less intuitive, and then iPad mini. So that's kind of a good way to get the ones that are mentioning competitors, for example. All right, so we have all that data, right? How can we make sense of all of it? How can we summarize it, visualize it, get deeper insights? So this is just a screenshot, so let me try to bring the actual. All right, so this is a little dashboard that I built for that data set. Again, this is from February, April 2018. So at the end, I just have kind of just a quick what the snapshot is in terms of sentiment. So lucky for Kindle, most of it is very positive, 91%, and only 5% negative. So that's excellent. You don't see that very often, I guess, especially if you're talking about services, right? And then here, this is what I don't want to call it a word cloud. I like to call it a context cloud because it's more than just words, right? So this is color coded, and everything is positive. So this is actually looks really nice. Perhaps a different data set would have been a better example. But if you color code it, you're going to see everything from green to red to yellow and everything in between, right? And then from there, you can see what people, if it's a bad review or bad feedback, what are people talking about? And if it's very positive, what are those very positive things that people are bringing up, right? So the other thing that you can do, and again, you can build it however you want, right? You can use your own creativity. This is how I had kind of one of the first things that I did. You can specify how much information you want to see. For example, in this, at the top here, I'm specifying give me at least 30 instances where these phrases were mentioned. But if you're gonna get more specific or more broad, you're gonna set it to 50, right? And it gets reduced, right? See more, maybe to 20, and then you're gonna see more, and maybe you're gonna start seeing some little negative things, like here, new one. I don't know what that's yellow, but yeah, that's be kind of like a neutral thing. And the other thing that you could do here is, and again, this is just something. You're not gonna get everything that you need from here. Nothing is gonna be the old classic sampling where you're gonna read the whole reviews, right? I mean, you're doing focus groups or whatever. But it's a great starting point, right? And then the other feature that you can implement is that if you want to focus on a particular keyword, you can click it. Let's see, I don't know, maybe reading books, and then you can filter like the actual reviews that mention that specific keyword. So again, it's going to narrow down. It's going to help you with your homework about figuring out what people are saying and so on. So, for example, this is the one that shows the keywords between 2 and 4. And let me show you what the other one looks like, which is between 3 and 4 keywords. Right. So yeah, it looks smaller, right? Because you could imagine that instances, the same instances of phrase of 3, the longer the phrase, the less frequent you're going to see it, right? So you expect the cloud to be less busy, but it may give you different type of insights, right? So for instance, here, what you didn't get in the other cloud, here you see people talking about good battery life. You didn't see that in the other one. You didn't even see good battery or battery life, right? For two keywords. So this may be something better for your use case. So you're gonna have to play around with it. Again, you can define the length, right? When you write the Python code, you can figure out what works best. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I'm open for questions.
That time ago we did similar analysis of students for customer center, like boost center. So it was only 40 times for 6 months before. And what we really had a hard time with was soccer. This was our major help. So everything
Right.
we worked with data and several other algorithms providing they have any recommendation there.
Yeah, so actually, for the people that are online, there was a question about how can we better perhaps measure sarcasm, because that's gonna give you, of course, an error. So yeah, so Vader, when you go for Vader sentiment, when you go to the documentation, it shows you examples of what it can handle. So you can handle everything from like emojis to exclamation marks to capital letters. I don't remember if it can handle sarcasm. I think it's something very hard to catch. Especially, and then if you're talking about extracting keyword, that becomes even harder, right? So that's a tough one. But it's an evolving field, right? I mean, a few years ago, we didn't have NFTs, we just had the single word cloud. So I think it's starting to evolve, and now you see different libraries for different industries specifically, right? So which is going to get more accurate. So.
I have a question. I mean, it's a tough topic, but sentiment analysis is,
Yeah.
it's really tricky. I have two questions. One is if you had the chance to cross-validate it with the ratings, because sometimes, especially in opinions and reviews, you actually have a little bit of quantitative data,
Yes.
and that's like the reviews. And the other one, actually, I have more questions. I never worked with Vader. I don't know if it's possible to do like adding a dictionary, for example. I know I saw like low price. Low price is a perfect example for a tricky phrase, because low price could be good, not bad, right? And low words like that. And yeah, in texture analysis, of course, if it's possible to do some lemmatization, some QS tagging, or something that would get more into the language itself. Does it do it automatically? If there's some, on the packaging, some features around that?
Yeah, so two questions. Basically, one about if we can, or if I have cross-validated the sentiment here with what the actual rating was, and the second question about oh yeah, we can tag like specific things that we're looking for. So yeah, I mean, for the cross-validation part, I think most of it is going to match what the sentiment is. Sometimes you're going to see some error, right? I haven't actually quantified the error to see how much error there is, but there's going to be some error, right? Like to the other person claiming you, sometimes you're going to find some sarcasm, right? And that's going to be perhaps shown very positive, I guess, in the context, but not negative in the sentiment. So it's kind of it's a bit tough. But yeah, that's a great way to kind of test whatever you want to deploy internally for your client, right? To do some cross-validation whenever a rating is available. Like in this case, it is available. In some cases, there's nothing like that available, right? So it's hard to cross-validate. And then in that case, I think you can do just some regular audits, maybe, right? You want to grab a sample every month or whatever, and then cross-check it to see if it's actually okay. Is this actually positive or not? And do these keywords make sense or not? So you can do it. You can validate it that way too. It's a bit more manual, of course, but sometimes the data is not there, so you can validate it, right? And then the other part about putting a specific tags, yes, I've done it not in the Python code, but I did it more on the user interface. In this case, Tableau. For instance, at Viacom CBS, I do this for Paramount Plus for app reviews in Google Play reviews. And where sometimes we look for a specific app downloads and conversions, for example, that are driven by specific shows, for example, right? So those shows, I can build it here and then map it to whatever this Python output is, right? So again, you can get creative. Maybe you can do Python too, especially if you are automating it. You have a data pipeline for it. You have a code or a model being automated, then you can maybe want to do it in a way. But yeah. much. All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
Alright, thank you. We're gonna go ahead, take like 10 seconds to switch this back over. Stan, if you wanna come on and join us. Thank you, that. Everyone, this is Stan, he's joining us from Mlflow, and definitely has a great talk about how such folks are using it.
Thank you, Gabi. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, everybody who's watching. I hope you stay with me for the next 20 minutes. I mean, you stay with me for the next 20 minutes. But... So my name is Stan. I am a data scientist with Lufthansa Industry Solutions. And, here, what? Well, we'll figure out how to talk. One thing I really like about being a data scientist is kind of you work with data and all the projects you do, you kind of be able to figure out facts which you would not be able to see if you would not work with data. And even sometimes if you work with big companies, they do not know things that you know. And one thing in traveling, you're all over here, right? I'm more or less. I mean, I know you just moved, but you're already local. You're already for 1.5 months. So, what do you think is the most busy airport in Florida? Who was it? Okay, all right. That's right. It's not Key West. It's Orlando. It's not Miami. It's not Fort Lauderdale. But it's Orlando. They even did very well in 2020, which people would not think, but 2020 was still a good year for Orlando and Atlanta airport. Not so much for Miami, but a little bit. What about passenger business travelers? Who do you think is the lead in business travelers? No, in Florida. Miami? Who was that? How do you know? You must work for an airline or something. All right. So you said it's absolutely right. Miami has the most business travelers, mostly because of international travel. A lot of people come in with huge airplanes where you have like 80 seats. Let's go to a more difficult one. What do you think happens with the amount of passengers coming in and going out if a storm is approaching? A storm approaching to Miami. So what do you think happens to the number of passengers? Is it what? The airplane? What gets diverted? The airplane gets diverted, but not what happens in advance. Do you think passenger numbers go up, passenger numbers go down?
Like a hurricane.
They go what? Up. Up? How do you know?
I've been here 20 years.
Then you know a lot. That's completely right. So actually the passenger numbers, the incoming passenger numbers, go up if a storm is approaching. We do not know why. Right? From a data science perspective, we just figure that this is happening. But we think it is because hotel rate drops. Might be, right? But if you do a beta test or a t-test on this hypothesis, you would assume they would go down. Right? Who flies into Miami if the storm is approaching? Right? Seems there are people out there who do this, right? Now and then. It still does not work, and I will give you a small introduction on who we are and what we do in Lufthansa Industry Solutions, and then we'll show you how we do passenger demand predictions in the airline business, in cruise business, and in motor coach business. Lufthansa Industry Solutions is an IT consulting company. Right? We support our clients in basically all IT issues, starting from the very beginning, where the idea is shaped and formed, where we have an ideation process, where we are very creative through the proof of concepts, MVPs, and then implementation, and of course operations. We are around about 2,100 consultants, IT experts in many fields, whether it's SAP, data analytics, NLP, computer vision. And we are based, if you could go to the next slide, please. We are based in Europe. Headquarters is in Europe, in Germany. Our headquarters for the United States is here in Miami, so Miami is our home. And from here we support clients in all North America. It looks a little bit different as it would look on my screen, but the colors and the company. Laura, you cannot tell this marketing. The marketing will not like it. We are part of Lufthansa Group, the airline, and 50% of our clients are also in the aviation industry, and 50% of our clients are not in aviation industry. So we're in healthcare or in many other industries. Here in the United States. Next slide, please. My team focuses on data analytics. We have artificial intelligence, but it's at the end data analytics. We consult companies on data strategy, on how to use data, on how to generate business impact with data. We have developers on site who build applications, who build any kind of BI tools and predictive tools, and of course operations which make sure the tools are running and do what they're supposed to do. And on the next slide, you will see again a fancy marketing slide. And we are mostly active with mid to large size companies here in North America and in Europe. That's about Lufthansa. Let's talk a little bit about passenger forecasts, and which you actually can see on the next slide. Thank you. So, passenger forecast is not a new topic. Right? One of the very first structural approach for passenger forecast was done in the 50s by Richardson, who was correlating the amount of beds you have, at the hotel at the airport with the amount of traffic passengers. And this was one of the very first structural approaches to do that. And in the last 70 years, we learned a lot about how to do those forecasts and also how not to do them, right? So both sides. And the whole idea why we do passenger forecasts is because companies want to reach their optimal resource allocation. Right? Every time you want to allocate food, fuel, or stuff to your trip, you need to know how many passengers will I have on this trip. Whether it's airplane, whether it's a cruise, whether it's a motor coach, you need to know how many passengers will be there. And if you look at this from a one-flight approach, right, one flight view, and you say you overestimate by 10%, it's not a big deal. Right? I mean, this will not change your financial values. This will not change the environment. But if you look at this from the total side, if you look at this from the aggregate side, here you see the numbers for US passengers, 2019, US cruise passengers, motor coach passengers, all 2019 data, right? 2020 is not the data to use. And if you overestimate here by 10% on the passenger, on the airline passengers, 92 million. And this is a lot. This will definitely drive your financial. This will definitely drive your environment. That's why improving those forecasts, even by 1%, has a huge financial impact and has a huge environmental impact. And that's why there's a good reason to do research on that. That's why there's a good reason to invest money in that from the company perspective. On the company side, if you look at this, actually I have an example. This is an example for passenger fluctuation throughout airline, motor coach, and cruise business, and actually for Orlando Airport. In the top bar chart, you see the incoming passengers in Orlando, and in the middle bar chart, you see the requests for operators, and on the bottom bar chart, you see the passenger numbers from a particular cruise line disembarking in Port Everglades, which is about 40 minutes east of Orlando. And data is on daily level. from 2 weeks in February 2019. And you obviously see the spikes, which are marked on the neck. Oh, now it works. Look at this. Yeah. Right? You obviously see the spikes here, right? And the data story behind those spikes is people arrive at the airport, travel agent books for those people, bring them from the Everglades. They board the ship, stay there for 5 days, and in 5 days this happens once again. If you now assume, if you now think about if you would use any kind of position parameter, any kind of medians, which is still done quite often, you would lose some of your business here. You would not be able to optimize to work on an optimal level. That's why we passenger predictions, passenger demand prediction with broad overview of data is important. To tell why there are spikes, why passenger numbers go up, and when they will go up. I think this is a good example also for all the incoming data sets. Actually, a training set here to investigate why there are spikes. Right? In any, if you would run an outlier analysis on this, those spikes would be quite often be identified as outliers and put out. So it's always good to know and better understand where your spikes come from, right? Invest your time in that. This was basically the example. Passenger forecast on a company level. Who is using those passenger forecasts, those numbers? There are mainly 3 departments who use them on a daily basis. One of them is revenue management. Revenue management does demand-based pricing, like long-term and short-term. Anytime they see a high demand, they go with high price, low demand, they go with low price model. They trigger upgrade demand, depending on the demand. Network planning. Network planning uses this information for anytime they want to introduce a new route, a new itinerary. And how often do I need to serve this route? Is it once a day? Is it twice a day? Which machinery should I use? Is it like a ship for 1,000, for 6,000? How many demand will I have? Those are questions. Those are decisions where they rely on the forecast. And of course, operations. So if you think on a cruise ship, about 12 eggs are planned in for each guest for each day. So if you are on if you overestimate by 200, right, you can count yourself how much eggs will be wasted. So it's important to have an accurate prediction. We are already for about 70 years. There's 70 years of research for passenger forecasts. And there is only one consensus in passenger forecast prediction research, which says there is no one model which outperforms all others. So depending on the data structure you have, depending on the data history, but also on the horizon you want to predict, the model change. And there are huge number of models you can choose from. And for the travel industry, I put here on the slides 3 types of models, which is just right? Of course, if you Google, you can find much more. And the first model I want to point out is a time series model. Time series is basically a sequence of ordered values in a constant time interval, and your forecasts are based on your history numbers. You basically assume that your future numbers will have the same behavior as your past numbers. Right? And there are several approaches how to do this. It's an autoregressive model where you look at the previous numbers, it's a moving average where you look at the error from the previous numbers, and there's a combination. Right? If you want to do it. Those kind of models work very well for short-term predictions. Anytime you want to go for 6 to 8 month predictions, time series is the way to go. There is a disadvantage. You need to have historical values. Right? This is an extrapolation. For an extrapolation, you need to have historical values. And anytime there is a structural change like 9/11, like COVID, it can be also small, like frequency change, like any kind of infrastructural change. Then those models do not work very well, right? You need to have kind of a stable data structure to apply time series. Progressive neural network, of course. This is where your forecasts are based on estimated function combining dependent and independent variables. Those kind of models are estimated with regression models, with neural networks, and work pretty well on short to midterm, so everything below 12 months works well. You need to have experimental variables, and as Carlos was mentioning, and many other sessions we heard, feature engineering will be an issue here, right? You will spend 90% of your time in those type of models on feature engineering, on data quality analysis, on what kind of parameters do I include, and can I include these parameters? Do I have any forecast for this in the future? Something which also is maybe an issue for this kind of models, if you cannot interpret those models in the airline regulations where you need to be able to interpret these models. Right? There's a company culture which says, if I cannot understand this model, I will not use it, even though those models perform very well. But this could be an issue in this kind of models. And the last model is gravity model. Has anybody of you already heard the gravity model? Gravity model is kind of derived from the Newton's law of gravity, Newton's gravity laws. This is correct. And the assumption here is basically the wealthier and the larger two cities are, the more traffic there will be between those cities, and the larger the distance between those cities are, the less traffic. So now you can think about how do you measure wealth, how do you measure population, how do you measure business or cultural ties, right? And the stronger those ties, the more traffic, the longer the distance, the less traffic. Due to the functional form, due to interpretation reasons, we apply a lot of regressional models on this. And the great advantage of this kind of models is you do not need to have any historical data. You don't need to have any information between the two and still get good results. And actually long-term results, right? which is very difficult to make. Right? Everybody needs to work with forecasts. Long-term forecasts are difficult to make. You have a lot of variation, and gravity models work well. Disadvantage on this side is you assume that every city pair can be explained by the same set of variables, which is not the case, right? Even not here in the United States, but if you go internationally, it's not realistic. Still, there is nothing which works better than gravity models for long-term forecasts. And on the data side, two data blocks. One data which is directly related to the travel, which is date of the week, time, how long away is the travel, distance, price ranges, alternatives. Alternatives is important, right? How many alternatives do I have? Do I have another airline to serve this route? Do I have another buses, trains? Right? It's an important one. Indirectly related data, which can be events, holidays, weather is an important topic, right? We did some analysis for a motor boat operator in New York, and you were from New York, right? Yeah. So nobody is traveling to New York if it's raining. If forecast and not nobody. The amount of passengers who go by motor bus to New York City drops significantly if rain is forecast. Right? So it seems people like to be outside New York and go to any kind of. So fuel price definitely also interesting. And economic and geographical parameters obviously for gravity models. I also recommend to include those parameters to any kind of regression models. On a county level, you have all those values for GDP, for population, business and cultural ties. This requires a little bit more work. A good example is somebody from Michigan. So in Michigan, there are two huge universities, one in Ann Arbor, the University of Michigan, and one in East Lansing, Michigan State. And there's a huge demand, passenger demand during classes because there are two universities. Those are not large cities, not super wealthy cities, but there's still a lot of demand because of this cultural tie. We recommend for passenger demand prediction a multimodal approach. A multimodal approach is basically an approach where you have several models trained for different kinds of requests, for different kind of request data coming in. For example, a request comes in for a flight tomorrow, which goes to model type 1, which based on the slides before would be a series model. Another request comes in for a long-term, for a flight in 6 months or in 9 months. This goes to model number 5, 6 whatever, right, which will be another type. So the multi-model approach, basically all the magic happens here, and data scientists have fun to train all those models, but it is work. And I will show you in a second why it is work. Right? So request comes in and goes automatically to the kind of model which is the best for this request. This model chooses the data it needs, and then it's tells you the number of what is expected. That much to the theory. And I have the practice example, the use case here is from the airline catering industry. And the airline catering is under pressure. If they overproduce, right, they generate costs and they generate food waste, which is not good. If they underproduce, they generate negative customer dissatisfaction, which is also not good. Right? So they kind of need to be right at the top, right at the point. And the supply chain in the airline catering works like this. 9 to 12 months before the food is produced, the food is ordered. And the actual production starts up to 1 month before, right? Depending on what we need, how fresh it needs to be, it starts up to 1 month before. So basically the chicken you will eat tomorrow on the flight was ordered already 6 to 9 months before, depending on the airline, depending on the airport where they are, right? So, and the production started probably about 4 to 3 weeks ago. So you have several forecast periods for different kinds of flights. So the goal here was to provide them with most accurate forecasts, more accurate than they would have so far. Obviously they would have some forecast, and to optimize the supply chain. So our approach was here to build a multi-model approach, which consists of about 40 models, 20 long-term, 20 short-term. Long and short-term are defined here a little bit different as I did before. From the research perspective, it's about 12 months. After 12 months starts the launch. The whole process is automated, so every time, basically the first time the model is trained, then it predicts the numbers. The model retrains itself or trigger. The retraining is triggered anytime the accuracy level hits a particular level. And only this model is then retrained. This model is safe at the forecasting site, where request comes in, and then basically the forecast is done. The platform contains obviously an analytics engine, right? A predictive engine. We have several external interface, external services outside for event data, for any other flight data. Event data is a mess. I don't know how you Carlos handle this, but event data drives us crazy. Several databases. You do need to have several data because most of the data is in different formats. Right? We have monthly data on the economical side. We have weather data, which can be on 15-minute side. We have daily data, so you have several databases. We have, of course, an interface to the customer requesting and pushing and pulling data, and a reporting tool. Why we have a reporting tool, I will show you in a second. I'm sorry for the design. It looks much nicer on my slides when you use Mac. This is basically additional logistics, right? Can be a little bit leaner, right? We do not, but for several reasons and company obligations, we have to go with a particular technology stack. After implementing this platform, we did, of course, the evaluation, and we figured out that for flights in August 2019, for one airport in Germany, which is in Frankfurt, we managed to achieve a reduction in error by 30%. If you translate this to business values, we reduce the number of wasted of food which was not used, meals which were saved, 80,000. Meals which were not produced because they didn't need meals which did not generate any cost, and meals which were not thrown away. This is 1 month, this is one airport, and this is one platform which changed so much. Right? So anytime, and that's actually why I really like this use case. I really like to present this use case because it shows that data science approaches really have a business impact. Right? I mean, a business impact of 37%, maybe you will not understand, or some people will not understand, but 80,000 saved meals, definitely.
Quick question: Do you penalize the model for being under versus over? Like you don't. I think the cost of a stock out is probably higher than over than having too much food in this case. So
Right.
do you
Rebalance.
use that?
Right.
So your loss function.
Yes. We have loss function in it.
So you're erring towards over predicting a little bit because you don't want to run.
Right. Over predicting is basically, I mean, you can solve the whole problem by over predicting. Right? I mean, if you have 480 seats on the flight, you 500 beings with you, and then you're on the safe side.
Right, but then you know what?
Right, but then there is a loss function, and depending on the flight type, depending on the competition, depending on the class, it depends. I mean, there is a different effect of a customer satisfaction if you are, let's say, on a cruise ship, here on the flight level, if you are in the business in first class. So, and definitely you have a different loss function. And so I think this is my last slide, and this is a slide. This is actually a screenshot from the dashboard we have for accuracy monitoring. I guess you all did data science projects. You all saw different kinds of accuracy monitoring, and we of course build this for ourselves to see how well model performs and not perform. But this is not the reason why I show it to you. We share this dashboard with business users. And the reason we share this is in order to be transparent. Because we strongly believe only the transparency will gain trust into those products. Right? People in that industry, many other industries, if we talk about cruise lines, they work for 20 years, if not longer, in that industry. They know how to do this. They know the numbers. So convincing them, if you came to go into the company and try to convince them, I know you feel it's 60, but now the system is saying it's 80. It will be difficult to convince them. Being transparent, providing them with this information, showing them when the model works and when it doesn't, will help you win their trust. And not being transparent kind of signals yields something. So be transparent in all your projects, show, and you will see high usage of those. That's it from my side. This is a nice contact slide, which you can contact me.
Thank you for the presentation. 2 questions. One, you mentioned when there's a period of structural change, such as 9/11, COVID, the models clearly don't apply, right? So I wonder if you can comment on what happened over the last year and a half. Did you have to have ad hoc models to survive?
What?
Ad hoc models. And the second question I have is from one of the key metrics for both the airline and passengers is on-time arrivals, right? So I'm wondering if you have any type of modeling approaches to do that, which I realize is very different, right? Because there's the weather issue and so, but it's a key metric, as you may understand. So those are the 2 questions I have.
Right. So basically the 2 questions were, the first question, how the model react to COVID, and the second one was how to predict on-time arrival, right? ETA, estimated time of arrival. On the first question, it was a big issue. Numbers on cruise was not working, right? But flights were still going, and the numbers were definitely wrong what the models had predicted. The reason the numbers were wrong because the models were trained on not all times. Right? So what you needed to do, what we needed to do, is to change or to weight the parameter which would include the near history higher than the previous history. You still have, I mean, the flight from let's say to Miami to Austin, was maybe still requested by essentially by less people. Right? So you still have the structure was still there, but you needed to weight the current information, the most current information, higher than you would do in a normal. Right? And that's what we did. The first couple of weeks were the accuracy was super bad, but then I don't have it in my mind. But after a couple of weeks, the accuracy returned. We were not at those values which we saw in normal times, but we were still above 90%, which was quite impressive. The second question, data prediction, actually was my very first project of data prediction, and I can talk for one day about this. One thing about data prediction, whether it's on an airplane or whether it's on a bus, is you can apply different kinds of models, and we tried back then, I think it was like machine learning or as starting correlation model and all kinds of. What really drives those models is features, right? At the end, the accuracy from different models was always the same. There was some here, some were better on long flights and some were better on short flights, but feature engineering was really driving this. And I can also tell you what the error was driven by the person, by the pilot, by the driver, because they were moved, because they knew it better, right? And maybe they did. I cannot judge it. But if they would keep the route, which was supposed to, the accuracy would be super high. But something's in it, and maybe something from the airline business. Right? One of the driver for data for estimated time arrival prediction was how many people you would have who would be scheduled for another flight. So if you fly from Miami to Atlanta, from Atlanta to Chicago with the same airline, they know that that you have transition. And if you have more guests on your flight who have such a connection, pilots will fly full to be on time. So they will also arrive early, which would also drive your accuracy, but they will drive early. But this was a nice feature for estimate pre-arrival. On every flight, doesn't matter whether it's in the United States or it works.
Hi, great presentation, very interesting. Supply chain is, we could be talking about that days and days and days. I know this is a little bit high level. I have two questions about one, the sources of the data, because it's not Lufthansa as well, right? You have all the other flights, you have they're in the airport. So I'm wondering if you take into account data that is provided from the airport. I don't know if you guys share data. And the other question would be the different teams. I don't know if there's only one team. That wasn't clear if there's only one data science team. You mentioned that the headquarters of the US are in Miami, but then you have another, I guess, in Europe. So how do you guys, because I mean at the very end, there are not many, normally you have like regional hubs where you have regulations that have an impact. I don't know if they're taking into approach. But I mean, ETA or passengers, it's pretty the same. So if you guys have if you share the models, if there's only one platform that all teams share.
Yep. So the two questions were, the first one, let me start with the second one. Where we have several teams for doing data analytics. Yes, so actually this is, the present project is not from Lufthansa. It's an airline caterer, which is not in Lufthansa. For the Lufthansa group, Lufthansa group has several data analytics teams, and some of them are focused on the operational side. So anything which is connected to data, to fuel predictions, to everything was related to operations, right, to efficient operations. And another data analytics team focuses on customer experience, right, which is a huge team who every time you go on the website, you check whatever they do in that field. And I think there is, and then Lufthansa Group consists of several large companies like Lufthansa Technik, and they also have their own data team, which seems at the first moment, why do you have so many teams? But all of those are different domains, even if they are one group, right? Lufthansa Cargo is simply has a different business, and their pricing is different, so dynamic pricing would be completely different as you would have on a passenger level. So it makes sense to have kind of different focused teams and know the data and have the domain expert do that. The first question was on whether we use any external data. We do, both for Lufthansa project, but also for any other project. Maybe about 5 years ago or so, it was an issue. So people kind of actually we have their own data. Yes, but it's not bad to verify this on your own data. Right? So whether on the airline business market, you have to go to flight stats, any kind of airflight statistics, you can fetch the data from airports just to verify. Sometimes you get airport data. They publish data faster than airlines, not only with Lufthansa, but also with United or American Airlines. So you can see changes earlier, which is great for the cruise line. So if a flight is cancelled and we know there are 100 guests on this flight for this cruise ship, we know they will not be preserved. Right, so this is important information, but we will have a lot of external data.
All right, I think we're good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, and our last event of the night is a very awesome panel. Mark, go ahead and join us. Antonio, Alejandro, I'm missing here, and Raimundo and Sean, if you want to come up here as well. We're gonna get a little cozy on the sofa over here. All right, Alejandro, I'll hand it over to you.
Hello, everyone. With COVID, maybe we need somebody to share. Okay. Well, sorry about the mic, everyone. I know that it has been playing around all night. Hopefully, it's gonna behave with us. So our discussion today, we're all here in Miami. Some of us has just landed. Some other people have been here for a while, but we're pretty excited with what's happening in Miami. And the discussion today that we wanted to bring was, since we're becoming a tech hub, and I also wanted to apply like a little spin-off on it to discuss a little bit further on becoming an AI tech hub as well, to see how we can maybe use this platform and brainstorm about showcasing Miami as a good place to develop technology, a good place to move your company here, a good place to find talent, and hopefully a good AI hub for the world. And so we have here representatives of each. So the mic is not behaving. So we have representative of each, I guess, not each, but most of the things needed in a city to become an AI hub for the world. So I'm gonna let each of you introduce, and then we can start the discussion from there.
I'm Sean Meadows. I'm an IT application analyst with the City of Coral Gables IT department.
Raimundo Rodulfo, I'm the IT director and chief innovation officer with City of Coral Gables, Florida.
Hi, my name is Kumar. I'm the co-founder and chief technology officer at Environment. It's an agriculture startup for folks who don't know.
And I will try to start the mic. This works better. So my name is Antonio Delgado, and I'm the Vice President of Innovation and Technology Partnerships at Miami College.
But we also have some people from the internet.
No.
Okay, so we have basically education, startup, yeah, you can say, or our company. We have the city. So I think it's pretty great parts of becoming an AI hub. So let's start with the beginning. Let's start with, why do you think Miami has become, why is this happening now? Now that after COVID-19, after everything that's happening, why now Miami is becoming this trend, this tech hub?
Well, I feel in our case, as one of the neighborhoods in the greater Miami area, we are seeing a transformation today in the way how what everybody's doing is being amplified. And for our team that we have been doing a lot of digital transformation over the last 10 years or more. We have been implementing smart city applications over the last 7 years or more. And we have been doing a lot of transformation for quality of life and applying these technologies. So we have not really seen like a correlation between what we're doing and the hype that we're seeing today. There are other factors and other drivers. Now, our hyper-local perspective is that we have been implementing this Industry 4.0 technologies for 6 or 7 years, and we have been making a positive impact in our community. Now, why today we see this hype and amplification over Miami is becoming a tech hub as a region? It has many different reasons, and I think COVID had to do a lot with that, and that the exodus that we see from areas like Silicon Valley or upstate New York, which by the way started happening a little bit before the pandemic, but the pandemic accelerated that. We have been listening about, hearing about those trends for multiple years, but the pandemic had a big effect. So I think that's one of the reasons.
So you're saying that not because of the pandemic, but because some other reasons, Miami has been becoming this attractive place to become a hub. And we all know, well, at least we've heard about what's happening in San Francisco with the public policies and how the taxes, rent, and all those things are happening. Then we know what not to do as a city to if you want to keep talent. But what do you think is happening in Miami that is the opposite of that? Because they could have moved somewhere else or invest somewhere else, but they're investing in Miami. So it's not just COVID-19.
So I moved down to Miami a year ago. We moved our startup from Pittsburgh, so I'm a part of that movement. To compare it with the Silicon Valley, the move, most people try to compare it with. The weather is one of the biggest reasons. Weather being one, access. So the lifestyle in Miami is another big reason for all the tech talent to be here, because you can work at the same time and also enjoy your life. It's so easily accessible to beaches, to nightlife. That's one of the reasons. No state taxes. It's a big reason for companies primarily to move down here. Those are some of the reasons.
So it's great to hear different perspectives, and what I think, adding on top of what they already shared, that those are the key factors. But it's also that Miami was already cooking. Like this tech ecosystem was already being built. We saw 6-7 years ago how the Knight Foundation started to invest in a local startup ecosystem. So that's the foundation to really get to the next level. So that gave us a good 5 years of growing internally with maybe lack of capital, but still creating a lot of opportunities. So then when the right moment came, because of the pandemic, because of the weather was always there, and the lack of, or not having state taxes was always there. So definitely the pandemic being the accelerator, but having already this foundation being created and having the opportunity to many people to say, if I can work remotely, right now with nice weather and the lack of state taxes, but having that ecosystem already being built, and then more importantly, I think, is showing government, showing the city and the county leaders to say, we're here to help. So that was the key differentiator, that tweet that is like the most profitable tweet now ever. So that's true. That shows many companies, startups, talent to say, okay, I have a city that the local government wants to help. That's important. So I think that all those factors together brought us today to where we are, and I think that our mission as different players that we are now living in this city is that how can we make this a movement and not a momentum, right? How can we keep it as a movement that is going to continue growing, not going down or staying steady, but really going up?
would just say I agree. I mean, you mentioned in other talks before, just laying a foundation and everything we do for the city to moving forward, and exactly like how Antonio was saying. Raimundo's been here, and everyone's been here. I started the city 3-4 years ago, but everything was already in motion, and so that the groundwork, the basis was already kind of moving things forward, and then COVID was more an opportunity than an instigator, I think.
Thank you. I completely agree with that, with all of it, actually. But now, if we spin it up a little bit to talk about AI, and that's what brings us here today. If you Google AI hubs in the world, you're going to see, like always, cities like London, New York. You're going to see cities that you know of and that you expect them to be there. But you also see other cities that you may not expect, like Austin and smaller cities that they haven't been hubs or of something technological in the past few years. But Miami is still not there in those lists. So obviously for us it's a big challenge, and it's something that we want to change. So what does Miami have to promote AI talent in terms of education, in terms of the city, and for companies?
So any question about talent is like a personal question for me. And so being in education, being in the largest college of this nation, 100,000 students, for us, we are a key driver to develop talent. So for me, usually that now we see a lot of, in the technical system that we're lacking is talent. And I don't want to say that I totally disagree. I would say that I partially disagree. That yes, we need talent, that we need talent with years of experience. So we have a pipeline of talent coming out of our universities, FIU, Miami-Dade College, UM, that is local talent. It's talent that is willing to stay, they don't want to leave, but only if they're given the opportunity. So the same happens with AI. So when you're talking about AI and the need for AI professionals, it's always like companies or startups looking for those people that already have 5 years of experience or a PhD on AI, or even maybe a master's degree on AI that they're getting now at that level. But the reality is that they're only looking for the experience. That pool of people is very limited, not only in Miami, worldwide. And then who is taking advantage of those PhDs? Like the big companies. Those are the ones that can pay those salaries. Those are the ones that can say, wherever you are, come here. So that becomes a challenge for startups, for even like regular companies. So our role at Miami-Dade College in this term of building talent on AI is how can we democratize AI? How can we make it accessible, equitable, really inclusive, as a way to say we're not going to be doing the PhDs of AI, we're going to be doing the applied AI professionals, the ones that understand AI and they know how to apply it into a project that the city might be doing or a startup might be growing. But you also need to have those companies, government or startups willing to try new talent, willing to give an opportunity, willing to mentor someone that is coming out of college without a work years of experience. So it's really a balance that yes, you need talent with 5 years of experience, but you need to commit to also first hire local talent and then give them an opportunity to mentor them. And that's something that we're not seeing on AI yet.
I have a question because I need to ask a question.
Yeah, please.
I'm Laura Gabriel. I'm the founder of Our Ladies Miami. It's an inclusive data science meetup that is locally here in Miami, part of a global network. And just like Our Ladies who presented on Tuesday, and this is the meetup week, there are many, many local talent communities, meetup communities here in Miami, in Orlando, in Florida, machine learning. So my question is how the government, startups, the academia see the role of these local communities as part of the ecosystem.
So for me, an ecosystem is everyone. It's not one or the other one. It's like that's why we are succeeding as a potential tech hub that we're growing. It's because we have government, we have cities, we have startups, we have academia, everyone involved. And these spaces like this week is needed as part of the ecosystem. And those meetups are needed to connect people. That's part of an ecosystem. It's networking, it's getting people to know each other. It's a way to potentially find a job for for someone that just that's a passion and maybe you're working in something different, but this is really your passion, and then those meetups you get to know a new company, a new potential employer. So yes, those are needed, and that's something that, at least in my case in Miami College, we want Miami College to be a host for those spaces, to have meetups. We have done it with, Google Cloud professionals that want to meet, they do it at Miami College. And we do the same at the Idea Center. We were doing it before pandemic with data science. So those are things that we want to keep alive because that's part of an ecosystem. So welcome to continue the conversation, especially with women.
I have a follow-up question. Thank you very much for that comment. And indeed, many of our members are either entry-level, young professionals, or people that moved in that want to get access. And this is an open question. How do you feel that we can communicate that to the meetups, that they know and there's a connection not only, because there's already a lot of work on organizing the meetup itself, but how can we connect everyone, all the players of this ecosystem? Obviously this is this type of event, but we could increase the participation. Maybe in 3 years it could be more. What could be some?
So for me, that's a question for Anna. Probably she's outside, but she's an expert on doing that because she created this week and she has been doing it for years. But so why she's successful? Because she meets with the Beacon Council and she connects with all the tech players in the Beacon Council. She connects with universities and colleges. She connects with government and cities. So she's an example.
Right now.
Great. She can answer your question, but she's an example of that.
I can add something on that. Community collaboration is key to connecting those sorts of people. And we as a startup, I resonate a lot with the trouble of finding people because everyone wants to hire the PhD, the experts. We're open to hiring more people, but it's still tough to find, and especially with the salary ranges going so high for data scientists and machine learning engineers. It gets even more tougher for startups to find that kind of talent, especially when we try to find locally. It's even tougher for us because we don't find that talent. It's either tough to reach them or it's not available. We don't know yet because we just don't get applications. So the collaboration amongst the different communities and more exposure of these kind of meetups will definitely help, and especially organizations like you and other 40 and Coca-Cola. So if they're the one who comes forward and they amplify the noise, that will help a lot in connecting those talents. So startups or companies like us can hire them.
Well, my question is related to what you were saying, but maybe you can answer that you're part of the city of Gable, because you mentioned I think a very important point, the salaries are not attractive enough, right, to keep the talent here, and that's maybe one of the biggest problems that maybe is hitting the community itself, right? So, and then my question is what is the cities or the say counties are doing in order to say attract and build this infrastructure that actually is needed to basically host all of these big companies and actually say, hey, let me invest in Miami so that these big companies can actually pay those salaries and then the county can stay here, right? Because if not, it's great to have these events, but it's not only great to only keep the conversation going and just being like a dog, biting his tail. The idea is to keep this thing moving, right? So that's really a question for the counties, yeah.
So something that we are doing is working together with the Economic Development Department and merging technology with economic development. We have a cohesive strategy that has to do with building the ecosystem, helping the local business community, working together with the universities, and working together with the Chamber of Commerce, and through many initiatives. The first thing that we have to do is to leverage our assets that we have in our community. So that talent that is, so I have never had in the last more than 10 years any issue with hiring good talent for my team. And we have hired them from Miami-Dade College, from Florida International University, from the University of Miami, like Schmal, and from other schools. We have never
I was an engineer in 1993, fresh out of college, and an organization believed in me. I didn't have any experience. And I was hired by Siemens at that time to do a project, and I had to learn. I was an electrical engineer. I never had to do anything with AI, and they gave me a project to build an expert system. And I had to learn, I remember, genetic algorithms in 1 week, because they gave me a problem, they gave me a challenge, they pushed me to the limit of learning fast and applying what I had to learn to solve a problem. And I do the same with my taskforce, they can tell you. We gave them problems and challenges and push them and give them deadlines. And I was telling Antonio earlier that I had one of my analysts in the network team. So his expertise is on the network side, on like switches, routers, that kind of stuff. And he's from Miami Dade College. And we tell him, okay, I need you to create a machine learning model to teach our AI that we use to count pedestrian, foot traffic, and vehicle traffic. I need to count bicycles now. And he had to train the system, so he didn't have a major or a background in that. But he knew that he can learn quick, and he knew how to apply problem solving, and he had a deadline. Very, very good. And he had to do it by that time. So he was pushed and he delivered. Why? Because we have been building our most important capital, is the human capital. So building a great team with the people that is able to solve problems and to learn fast. There's no shortage in our community for the last 10 more years of that talent. You have to believe in them. You have to believe in that talent. You have to give them the opportunity. You have to push them. You have to give them challenge, and they will learn. Are they being paid fairly? No. Florida, traditionally, I can tell you, someone that I was an engineer with Motorola in Chicago, and I went to Silicon Valley to work in the 2000, and then I came to Miami in 2003. I can tell you, I noticed right away that the salaries were very different. So, and then, you know, there are other traits, there are other things that you can take into consideration.
So you pose a great point, and that's something that we as an ecosystem has to practice. It's like, you know, like the chicken or the egg. It's like companies, and you hear that clearly, startups or companies saying there is not enough talent. And then people from here saying, I want a job, and I want a high-paying job. So what's happening? If we have talent, and companies are saying that there is no talent. So there is a gap that we have to fill, and it's not just talking about it, but we have to talk about it. We have to bring it up and continue to bring it up and really get into the middle point, like Raimundo is saying. That's how it is. He trusts in people. So that is telling the startups that you have to trust. Maybe instead of asking for 10 years of experience, can you ask for 5 or 3? So it's a way to have that meaningful conversation, but how can you find that middle ground that someone is able to trust? Now, one point about salaries. You have to keep in mind, salaries in San Francisco might be higher, but remember, there are state taxes in San Francisco, there are state taxes in New York, there are state taxes in all these places where higher salaries, but when you put the taxes on it, it's not really like as much as you thought, not necessarily. Now, I believe that yes, we're still underpaying, as again, in Florida, Miami, but all these new companies that are coming, they're going to start offering more salaries, and that's going to create a competition for existing companies that, oh, I'm losing my talent now, so better I raise salary. So that's going to happen, but keeping in mind that we don't pay state taxes, so that's good. It's not going to be the same salary than Silicon Valley, but we are growing, and we're posing the right questions at the right time, and we're, you know, talking to the government, the city, the county, when they bring companies, how can you make them really connect with local talent? How can you give them incentives only if they hire local talent? So how can we pose those questions to the city, the county, and how can we keep that conversation alive in these type of meetups?
And also, I think something that's very important that maybe the city is already working on, aware of, is that I think Miami itself as a city as a brand also. It's known as a party city. So I think that really diminishes the potential that the city has and the real talent that there is here. So I don't know, really, it's also like it's a point that the city is considering, like, hey, we need to like get that tag out of us, you know, and actually we're not only a party city, you know, we're also like a city that has like talent, that has innovation, that has startups, and a city that is growing, right? And has culture, a lot of culture. So I think also it's like a very important point because internationally, that's how people look at us, you know, like so it's like a leisure destination
because we can do all those things as well. So I would like to show you one particular case. Is that Sean, who is a grad from UM, he's an IT analyst in applications, but really he didn't have too much exposure to machine learning and to AI, and we signed an MOU with Scala.ai, which is an organization that works together with Politics Academy. And Sean has been going through this program for the last how long? January. Can you talk a little about your experience and how you learn this skill in a short period of time?
Yeah, I mean, having a little bit of background in applications, having a background in programming kind of helped accelerate it, but it's a pretty fast-moving but also easy to follow program to get into not just machine learning and AI, but also gets you in the mindset, like Antonio was saying with NBC, like the business side aspect of how to apply everything you learn from it. The beginning started off all the introduction to fundamentals, and then moving into machine learning models, regression, classification, deep learning. We're going into natural language processing and computer vision this next module, but it's all been very interesting and really easy to work with. At least now we talk with COVID and everything remote. It's made it very easy to work with them. I've done 2 projects in each module. We have projects. One was with regression. We at the City of Coral Gables have a partnership with Waze. I think it's the Waze for Cities program, just to get traffic data in our area, and that's everything from traffic alerts to like jams and like lengths and times, distances, and everything. And so I just took a look at all that and plotted those, instances and kind of used regression models to sort of get a little prediction of areas where there may be a higher expectation of jams or lengthening stays in traffic, and for businesses with where there is more traffic, or if the city's hosting events, where to put somewhere or not somewhere if they're planning for how people get there, or police, where to station people to manage and hopefully prevent accidents and such. Another one dealing with deep learning. I took satellite imagery of a lot of the South Florida area and broke them into little tiles, and using convolutional models, tried to teach it to predict and classify the areas for zoning and classification use. Because during the project, I looked at zoning maps of Coral Gables, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and they use a bunch of varying and different classifications, both municipal zoning and unincorporated, and making it very, very confusing. And I know construction and development is always going on, so I just thought the idea to scan if it was like a current and up-to-date satellite image, if you could scan it and classify it on the fly, it would make that process quicker and easier. And if this idea was like towards the end of the project, just thinking of ideas we could use for emergency response. If you could see an area with we use drones a lot at the city, if we could scan an area to see, is this flooded or trees down, an easy way to get police or response out there instead of having someone be there. Go say, oh yeah, it is totally blocked off. But everything learning from that has been interesting. The people at Strata AI make it fun and interesting, and I actually recently got my certification from Microsoft for Azure AI fundamentals. Everything in that certification that we covered already, so it's a pretty easy certification in my opinion. But yeah, I love use of that.
No, just telling you how basically you have to believe in the talent that you have in your own organization, and anybody really can continuously improve and evolve and learn more and apply what they're learning. Like Sean is solving problems that are affecting the quality of life in our city and are helping our departments in our public safety offices. So you see, it didn't take too long to develop the talent and the capacity. And of course, you still need for very advanced applications, you may need those PhDs still. And I believe in research. I work with a lot of researchers in academia, but there are many things that are actionable that you can do with the talent that you have, or with talent with little experience, but is eager to learn and knows how to learn fast, and need to have deadlines. You need to push people to really to learn fast and to arrive at their level.
To summarize
try to bring back the solution to Miami. I think what Antonio was mentioning about having an agile approach to education, in which we're graduating people not to become these PhDs, but to apply immediately what's needed in the industry. I think that's the key value for Miami. I completely agree with you. I think it's a great approach to make us be different from these other hubs and maybe more agile and more applicable. Because I know for a fact that they're also having the same trouble finding talent and stuff. And in terms of what Raimundo and City of Coral Gables is doing, I think if you want to become an AI hub of the world, you also need cities like Coral Gables that are applying AI and research as much as they're doing. Because I think you're gonna find hard to find a city that has more open data. And when you're talking about AI, it's all about data, right? That's one of the most important things. How can you evolve fast if you don't have enough data? So that's something that I know for a fact that Silicon was doing with data. Everything's open source. They're actively using it and building models on top of that. And I know that they're also very welcoming to anyone that wants to collaborate or use that data. When someone was asking about meetups and stuff, I also, every time I speak with Raimundo, it's incredible how much energy he has on mentioning all the things that you can do in the city of programs in AI. Like, even offering office space and everything. I don't want to make any offers here, but I do know that Raimundo is very strong forward in terms of collaboration for AI. So I do think that if you're going to do meetup and you do it in Core Gables, it's going to be amazing as well. And you're going to have a lot of support. And that's something that I know for a fact. And I was hoping you say that. I didn't say that. I know that you're going to say it. Yeah, so definitely City of Core Gables is a very amazing use case for AI and for anyone that wants to build something in AI. My last comment on salary is about, I don't think really salaries are the biggest competitive indicators for talent, because coming from Latin America, I do know that some of the countries in Latin America have a lot of talent and they still don't pay enough, and they don't pay as much as New York. So I do think making a lot of money and spending a lot of money in a city is going to be making it more attractive. And I think the transition to Miami has proven that, right? Like all these people coming and willing to like to have a lower salary in Miami, because companies are actually adjusting based on your location. So,
quick question: how much? So I just moved down here about a month ago from Pittsburgh.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And so there's actually, I would say, like a surplus of AI coming in Pittsburgh around the university. Like how much national from like the South Florida tech community? It's like totally like feel the energy down here, and it's definitely a thing. But is there any thought to like national outreach to try to sort of actively get the reputation out there? Because if I wasn't working with Kumar, I honestly probably wouldn't have come down here just because I wouldn't really have thought of it, nothing negative. But now that I'm down here, I love it. It's obviously a lot nicer than Pittsburgh in a lot of ways. So I'm just curious what the approach is of like the local AI community on national, like active national outreach.
I'm going to pass the mic to Antonio. I think you're involved in a lot of initiatives you can mention.
That's a great question, because it's also attracting talent to come and study here, right? And to create a buzz of, people want to come to Miami to study, to then get a job because of the position. So that's a great question. And I would answer from a point of view of education that first you have UM, that being more like an international player, like a national player with that recognition, and they just built their data science department, and they're launching their data science degree. So we see UM going in that direction. Then you have Florida International University. They were just sitting there, but they were advertising their MBA in business analytics. So Florida International University just was ranked the best public institution in Florida, and nationwide they were ranking in the first top 20, right? So you see young institutions And then Miami-Dade College, which I serve, we are college for the local community. We're not really advertising to the nation. We're just helping the local community get the right skills to get a job. So to your question, I think that we don't have those Stanfords, like MIT, the Harvards. We don't have those Ivy Leagues here. We're not recognized for that. But we are Miami. And the beauty that I see here is that it's in Miami that all the players are willing to play together to make it stronger. So it's not about the reputation of one institution, it's about all of us working together also with the local coding schools, like Perkins and others that we have here. Like working together in partnership because that's going to make the ecosystem stronger. Maybe that's not going to be noticed in those other places in the nation, but for the ones that are here, it makes the ecosystem stronger to at least that this community will be better together and hopefully in the near future getting that attraction of students nationally deciding to come here. Now when many parents come here because of their jobs, they're bringing their kids. So by default, that's a pipeline of new families moving here, that education is all the way from K-12 needs to continue evolving. And we have to make sure that from the ecosystem is also pushing on education to evolve. Not only one piece of education, all the way from K-12 or actually K-16, and all the way to a master's or a PhD. So great points, and I think that when you think about Miami, Miami is like what, 125 years old. As a city, it's not that old. It's a baby as a city. So this tech ecosystem is just a reflection of how Miami is growing as a city, and now we are playing a role in getting tech as part of that, young city that is growing. But education in Miami is also growing as again as a city, and we're happy to be part of this movement again, and hopefully we get more people like you and you to come here and try, and hopefully we can continue growing your local talent to really help you grow your company.
I can add more stuff. So Miami historically has been a tourism city, right? And that's primarily been the mindset behind it. I wouldn't have moved to Miami. Miami would have been the tourism city. It would not have been the technology, the ecosystem. And that shift has to be portrayed around the world. That it's got enough opportunities and potential as a technological ecosystem. And once that kind of a picture is portrayed around the world, similar to like how Silicon Valley has and other places have. So and that's happening. It started happening almost a year and a half ago. Something started happening, and once that accelerates further and more people start to understand that it's got a lot more than just tourism. It's got that technological ecosystem to be a part of, say, a beautiful lifestyle. That's when more and more people move and understand the value of it.
Well, I know that we had a half an hour, and I think it's been already half an hour, so we can just pass the mic and one additional thing that we want to say about. I wanted to finish with how can we help? The same question that the video was asking a long time ago, or not a long time, short time ago, about what do you need from other people, from companies, from citizens, from other schools, from Miami in general? What do you need in your point of view, like you being in the city, you being in a company, and you being in education? What do you need from other people, other companies, to help you achieve your current goals of helping Miami become this AI or tech hub in the world?
Yeah, I mean, the collaboration, that is already going on. It's been standing out to me already, and so just more of that, making all those connections stronger and helping each other grow and learn more seems to me to be a huge advantage that we can build on.
Sean said it better than me. So basically, we have to continue building those connections, connecting the dots, and that's what I try to do as Chief Innovation Officer every day: is connect two dots, at least two dots every day, and keep connecting them, and it's exponential. We're building that grid of brain power, and I think that we have the talent already, and we have new talent that is coming, and we need to find a way how to create jobs, and how to bring those startups, connect them with the VCs and the angel investment, and bringing all those communities together. And so we have a lot of initiatives. We need to amplify. Sometimes I mention those initiatives and people haven't heard about it. So how can we spread the word better? So it's a communication issue. So do we know, for example, that today was the deadline to submit an application for the World Business Angel Investment Forum, Miami office? And I tried to amplify that as much as we could. Little people knew, and yesterday I was speaking in this same series of events, and I shared the news with 2 or 3 startups that are new there. But how can we create a network of communication where those things are amplified and spread the word the right way? Because the opportunity exists, but you miss the box. So you miss the box if you don't. So we need to make a better job, I think, in communicating and find those opportunities because they exist. And sometimes they are wasted because we don't share the knowledge. So that's my 2 cents there.
It's funny because the opportunity you told about the business forum, right before coming to this conference, I saw that opportunity because he shared on LinkedIn, and I was like,
have time.
Time's deadline's today, and I would have submitted it, maybe we may submit it. So it's important, the collaboration and communication, those are the 2 important points I had to mention. Historically, Miami is a very diverse culture, and people often compare it to Silicon Valley. But Miami is on a different track. It's on a track to become a very diverse portfolio, like even hardware startups, software startups, creative artists. You talk about a different field, and Miami is on a track to become leader. So it really needs to become that tech hub, and communication and collaboration.
So for me, that question about what needs to be done, I'm committed to creating talent that is needed, but I can only work on giving them skills. So what I need is companies to give them an opportunity. So working in collaboration and communication on what is needed, I'm committed to make that happen. To listen and to bring that to education and bringing the key players, IBM, also participate, the Microsoft, the AWS, the Googles, the Facebook, all the big tech players, creating technology to bring them down to education. But then I need opportunities for the students that we're graduating to really get into the ecosystem and really to have an opportunity. They are not having an opportunity now. So we're building this, and then the talent is leaving because there are not enough entry-level positions here. So that for me is what we're missing. We need to fill that gap, and sometimes it's incentive from the government, but sometimes it's just a willingness to do it.
All right, well, thank you so much. That was such a wonderful discussion. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around. I know this went over, but this was worth it, and it's really great to be here in Miami during this time. So those of you watching, move to Miami. We have a lot of great things going on. If you're hiring data scientists or want to start a business, this is the place to come. So come and join us, come and join the conversation. Thank you so much for Borges and all of our speakers for joining us. Thank you for you guys for staying so late. And now you can go ahead and mingle and enjoy the rest of the evening. And you guys, we'll see you later, and this will all gonna be available on demand for 2 weeks. So thanks, and we'll see you later. All right, thanks, guys.